Welcome to The Blueprint of Crime, Society, Psyche, The Story Untold. I'm your host, Anna, and in this podcast, we delve into the complex, often hidden, dimensions of true crime. We journey beyond the sensational headlines and the simple narratives, seeking to understand the intricate web of societal forces and psychological currents that silently shape these profound human tragedies. Today, we begin a new series we're calling Fractured Realities. This series isn't just about identifying who committed a crime, or even precisely what happened. Instead, we'll meticulously reconstruct cases by examining the deep-seated psychological profiles of those involved and the pervasive social dynamics, from class divides and community neglect to cultural pressures and generational trauma that may have played a pivotal, yet often overlooked, role. You might know the headlines, the shocking outcome of the case we're discussing today. But what if the true story of this tragedy lies not solely in the evidence log, but in the echoes of a fractured community, or the silent battles within a troubled mind? This isn't just a retelling. It's a deeper dive into the societal and psychological undercurrents that we believe are crucial to truly grasping the why. Join us as we begin to unravel the threads of a reality that, for some, became profoundly fractured. To truly understand a fractured reality, we must first understand the ground upon which it stood. Every crime, every tragedy is rooted in a specific environment, a community with its own unique blueprint. In the case we're examining, the setting was a seemingly quiet, middle-class suburban town. On the surface, it might have appeared peaceful and outwardly prosperous, a place many moved to for its good schools and low crime rate. But beneath this veneer, we begin to uncover a more complex picture. Let's delve into the specifics. This community, Maple Creek, had been grappling with a subtle but pervasive sense of economic anxiety, largely due to the gradual shift from stable, generational manufacturing jobs to a more precarious service-based economy, coupled with rising property taxes that strained many long-time residents. For instance, local economic reports indicated a significant increase in household debt over the past decade, and news archives from local papers frequently featured stories about small businesses struggling to stay afloat against larger corporate chains. These weren't just abstract statistics. They were lived realities that shaped daily life, influencing everything from the pressure on young adults to move away for better opportunities to the unspoken stress within many family homes. We also see patterns in the prevailing community attitudes. Was there a strong emphasis on maintaining appearances and a quiet resistance to acknowledging social problems within the community? For example, many residents, particularly those who had lived there for decades, expressed a strong desire to uphold Maple Creek's reputation as an ideal place, which sometimes meant a reluctance to discuss issues like mental health struggles, domestic disputes, or financial hardship openly. This ingrained perspective, while seemingly benign, can, over time, create subtle pressures and barriers, sometimes leaving individuals feeling profoundly alone, even within a seemingly supportive environment. Understanding this community blueprint is not about assigning blame, but about recognizing the fertile ground upon which certain narratives, and indeed, certain tragic outcomes, can take root. Having explored the community blueprint of Maple Creek, we now turn our gaze inward, into the complex and often veiled landscapes of the human mind. This isn't about clinical diagnosis from afar, but rather an empathetic and analytical look at the psychological backgrounds of the individuals central to this tragedy. We seek to understand the contours of their inner worlds, the early indicators that, in retrospect, might offer crucial context, always with profound sensitivity and an absolute commitment to avoiding victim blaming or simplistic explanations. Let's consider the young man at the center of this case, Ethan. While we must respect privacy and the limitations of external analysis, what we can piece together from interviews with former teachers and select excerpts from a journal later found by authorities suggests a childhood marked by a pervasive sense of unacknowledged loneliness, despite being surrounded by family. These early experiences, even if seemingly minor at the time, can lay down pathways, shaping an individual's coping mechanisms, their sense of self-worth, and their ability to form secure attachments. Furthermore, we see indications of a recurring struggle with severe social anxiety and a profound difficulty in forming meaningful peer connections. These weren't necessarily overt cries for help, but subtle shifts in behavior, changes in routine, or expressed feelings of hopelessness that, in a different context or with different support, might have been recognized. For instance, his high school counselor noted persistent absenteeism from group activities and a tendency to retreat into solitary pursuits, often declining invitations to social gatherings, which he later expressed in his writings as feeling too overwhelming. Understanding these internal landscapes, the vulnerabilities and the silent battles, is not about excusing actions, but about acknowledging the intricate human experience that precedes tragic events. Beyond the individual's inner landscape and the broader community, crimes often crystallize at the intersection of critical relationships. These interpersonal webs, whether familial, friendly, romantic, or professional, can become conduits for escalating tension, unaddressed conflicts, or unexamined power dynamics. In Ethan's case, examining these connections is crucial to understanding the path that led to a fractured reality. Let's first look at the family dynamics within Ethan's home. While details are understandably private, insights from interviews with extended family members suggest a household where communication was often indirect and emotional expression was subtly discouraged. For instance, one aunt described the family environment as polite but distant, where disagreements were rarely voiced openly, leading to a buildup of unspoken resentments. This dynamic meant that Ethan, already struggling with social anxiety, likely found little outlet for his internal struggles within his primary support system. Then there were Ethan's few but intensely significant friendships. While he struggled to connect broadly, there was a particular friendship with Alex that appeared to be marked by a fluctuating power dynamic and a subtle undercurrent of dependency. This relationship, initially a source of comfort, over time seemed to evolve into something more complex. For example, text message records later recovered suggested a pattern where Alex's unpredictable moods often dictated Ethan's emotional state, creating a volatile and uncertain foundation. Analyzing these relationships isn't about assigning blame to individuals within them, but about recognizing how patterns of interaction, unresolved conflicts, or even unintentional neglect can contribute to a highly pressured environment for someone already vulnerable. These interconnections, seemingly ordinary, often held the threads that, when pulled too tightly, began to fray the fabric of Ethan's reality. As we delve deeper into the narrative of fractured realities, we often arrive at a critical juncture, the period immediately preceding the crime, a time when external societal pressures converge with an individual's internal psychological state, potentially leading to a profound breaking point. For Ethan, this period was marked by a confluence of escalating pressures. In the months leading up to the tragic event, Ethan experienced significant academic pressure to achieve high grades and gain admission to a prestigious university, a goal heavily emphasized by his family and the aspirational culture of Maple Creek. This wasn't just a personal ambition, it was a deeply ingrained societal expectation in a community that valued outward success. Simultaneously, he was grappling with an intense period of social isolation after a falling out with his key friend, Alex. This loss of his primary, albeit volatile, social connection left him feeling profoundly adrift and alone. We can see this confluence of pressures in entries from his personal journal, where he often wrote about sleepless nights driven by academic anxiety, followed by despair over perceived rejections from his peer group. These external pressures intersected dangerously with Ethan's pre-existing psychological vulnerabilities. His severe social anxiety and intense self-criticism, which we discussed earlier, made him particularly susceptible to these kinds of stresses. The academic demands, which for others might be challenging but manageable, became overwhelming to someone who felt every imperfection was a catastrophic failure. The social isolation, which might be difficult for anyone, was amplified to an unbearable degree for someone already struggling to form connections. This created a spiraling effect, where his inability to meet these high external standards, coupled with his burgeoning loneliness, led to a rapid deterioration in his mental well-being, manifesting in extreme withdrawal, and a profound sense of hopelessness that became increasingly difficult for him to conceal. This period highlights how powerful external forces, when left unchecked and unmitigated, can collide with an individual's fragile inner world, pushing them past a critical threshold. In the wake of a tragedy, it's natural to look for blame, but in Fractured Realities, we aim to look for patterns, for the subtle cracks in the systems designed to support us. This segment critically examines how various institutions, whether intentionally or inadvertently, may have failed to intervene, overlooked crucial signs, or inadvertently contributed to the tragedy through their actions or inactions. This isn't about condemnation, but about illuminating areas for necessary improvement. In Ethan's case, we observe several potential blind spots within existing systems. Firstly, consider the school counseling services. While the school did have a counselor, the sheer volume of students assigned to each counselor in Maple Creek High School meant that individual students, particularly those who were quiet or less outwardly disruptive, often went unnoticed or received only superficial attention. For instance, despite the counselor noting Ethan's increased absenteeism from group activities and a decline in his academic engagement, the protocols for follow-up seemed insufficient to truly delve into the depth of his distress. There was no consistent, proactive outreach that could have detected the escalating severity of his social anxiety and self-criticism. Secondly, the local mental health services in Maple Creek also presented significant barriers. The closest specialized adolescent mental health facility was over an hour's drive away, and the limited number of local therapists meant long waiting lists and a lack of immediate availability, particularly for those on public insurance plans. Even if Ethan or his family had decided to seek professional help, the institutional hurdles were substantial. There was no integrated system for school counselors to easily refer students to external services, leading to a fragmented approach where distressed individuals could easily fall through the cracks. These systemic shortcomings, while not directly causing the tragedy, created a landscape where a young person like Ethan, struggling silently, faced immense challenges in accessing the timely and appropriate support that might have diverted him from a path leading to a fractured reality. Once a crime shatters the quiet of a community like Maple Creek, it inevitably enters the public square, amplified and shaped by media coverage. This segment explores how traditional news outlets and the ever-present hum of social media constructed narratives around Ethan's case, influencing public perception and, at times, inadvertently obscuring the deeper truths we've been trying to uncover. In the immediate aftermath, the local news coverage initially framed the event as an inexplicable act of violence in a picture-perfect town, focusing heavily on the shock and disruption it caused to the community's carefully maintained image. This narrative, while understandable, tended to emphasize the strangeness of the event rather than exploring its potential roots. The early reports often highlighted Ethan's quiet demeanor and academic struggles as isolated facts, rather than connecting them to a broader psychological context or the societal pressures we've discussed. This created a dominant archetype of the troubled loner, a convenient but ultimately incomplete explanation that fit pre-existing public expectations about such tragedies. As the story moved online, particularly on local community social media groups and national true crime forums, the narratives fractured further. Speculation ran rampant, with unverified rumors about Ethan's motivations and the victim's past quickly gaining traction. There was a strong tendency to seek immediate, simplistic answers, often resorting to moral panics about the dangers of social media or the breakdown of family values, rather than engaging with the nuanced complexities of mental health, social isolation, or systemic shortcomings. This online echo chamber often reinforced existing biases, making it difficult for a more empathetic or analytical understanding to emerge. The media, in its various forms, became a powerful lens, but in this instance, it inadvertently amplified certain elements while blurring out the intricate social and psychological tapestry that truly comprised Ethan's fractured reality. A crime is never an isolated incident. Its impact reverberates far beyond the immediate moment, leaving a lasting imprint on individuals and communities. In Maple Creek, the event involving Ethan sent shockwaves through a town accustomed to its quiet tranquility. This segment explores the long-term aftermath, the psychological tolls, and the efforts, or perhaps the struggles, towards healing. The most immediate and profound impact was the lingering trauma on the victim's family and close friends. Their lives were irrevocably altered, grappling not only with immense grief, but also with the public scrutiny and the media narratives that had shaped the story. Beyond them, the wider community experienced a palpable loss of innocence and a deep-seated fear that eroded the sense of security they once cherished. For instance, reports from local counsellors indicated a significant increase in anxiety among high school students, many of whom struggled to process the idea that such an event could occur within their familiar environment. There was a collective struggle to reconcile the picture-perfect image of Maple Creek with the harsh reality that had unfolded. In terms of community healing, the efforts in Maple Creek were mixed, reflecting the community's earlier tendency towards maintaining appearances. There were initial vigils and public expressions of solidarity, which provided some immediate comfort. However, deeper, more sustained conversations about underlying issues like mental health support or the pressures on young people seemed to be largely avoided. While some families organized private support groups, there was no widespread, public initiative led by the town council or school district to openly address the systemic issues that may have contributed to Ethan's fracturing reality. The desire to move on and restore normalcy often overshadowed the critical need for a more comprehensive and honest process of collective healing. This left many residents, particularly those closer to the periphery of the event, with lingering questions and an unspoken sense of unease, suggesting that while the immediate crisis passed, the deeper societal cracks remained. In the unraveling of a fractured reality, it's crucial to step back and engage with the ethical dilemmas inherent in such complex situations. This isn't about assigning simple blame or absolving responsibility, but about considering the points at which different choices, both by individuals and by the systems around them, could have altered the trajectory. It asks us to reflect on the complexities of human agency within challenging circumstances. Consider first the ethical responsibilities of the community and its unspoken expectations. Maple Creek, as we discussed, fostered a culture of maintaining appearances and prioritizing outward success. This raises the question: at what point does a collective desire for perceived perfection become an ethical burden on individuals, especially vulnerable ones like Ethan? Could a more empathetic, less judgmental community culture, one that openly acknowledged struggles rather than burying them, have created a space where Ethan felt safe enough to seek help before his internal world completely fractured? This isn't to say the community is directly culpable, but rather to probe the subtle ways in which collective norms can inadvertently exacerbate individual distress. Then, we must consider the ethical challenges faced by those who might have noticed subtle signs in Ethan's behavior. For instance, his teachers or even casual acquaintances might have observed his increasing withdrawal or anxiety, yet felt constrained by a lack of clear protocols for intervention, or perhaps a fear of overstepping. What are the ethical obligations of individuals when they witness a slow decline in another person's well-being, especially when that person is a minor? Is there an ethical imperative to overcome discomfort or perceived barriers and initiate a difficult conversation or alert a responsible party, even if the outcome isn't guaranteed? This doesn't imply that any single person could have unilaterally prevented the tragedy. Instead, it invites us to consider the cumulative impact of numerous small choices, or non-choices, at various points along Ethan's path. The story of fractured realities compels us to look beyond just the legal aspects of right and wrong, and into the more nuanced terrain of moral responsibilities and the profound weight of human choice. As we bring Ethan's story, and indeed, this exploration of fractured realities, to a close, it's essential to synthesize what we've learned. The goal of the Blueprint of Crime is not simply to recount tragic events, but to extract broader insights about human behavior, societal responsibility, and the ongoing need for empathy and critical thinking. The case of Ethan in Maple Creek offers several crucial lessons for cultivating a less fractured future. Firstly, it underscores the profound importance of proactive mental health support and accessibility, particularly for adolescents. We saw how systemic barriers and a lack of integrated services meant that even subtle indicators of distress could go unaddressed until they escalated to crisis levels. The lesson here is clear. Communities must invest in robust, easily accessible mental health resources, destigmatize seeking help, and empower institutions like schools with better training and clearer pathways for intervention. This involves not just crisis response, but preventative care and a culture that values emotional well-being as much as academic or economic success. Secondly, Ethan's story highlights the critical role of genuine human connection and the dangers of societal pressures that foster isolation. The emphasis on individual achievement in Maple Creek, coupled with a reticence to openly discuss difficulties, created an environment where someone struggling with social anxiety could become profoundly isolated. We learned that fostering authentic community connections, encouraging open communication, and challenging cultural norms that promote silence or the suppression of vulnerability are vital. This means moving beyond superficial appearances to build resilient social fabrics where individuals feel seen, heard, and supported, rather than feeling they must navigate immense pressures in solitude. Ultimately, Ethan's fractured reality serves as a poignant reminder that true crime, at its core, is often a story about deep human need going unmet, and about the collective responsibility we share in building communities that are truly equipped to nurture and protect every individual within them. The story of Ethan and Maple Creek, like so many we explore on the Blueprint of Crime, is a stark illustration of how individual vulnerabilities can intertwine with societal pressures and institutional blind spots, creating a reality that ultimately fractures. It reminds us that behind every headline lies a complex tapestry of human experience, one that demands our empathy, our critical analysis, and our willingness to look beyond the obvious. Our journey through fractured realities aims to challenge our perceptions, to push us to consider the why with greater depth and nuance. It's not about finding easy answers, but about encouraging a more thoughtful dialogue on how we, as a society, can better understand, support, and protect those who are most vulnerable. Thank you for joining me today on the Blueprint of Crime, Society, Psyche, the Story Untold. If this episode resonated with you, or if it sparked new questions, please share it with others. The more we engage with these complex narratives, the better equipped we become to understand the blueprint of crime, and perhaps to build a future that is less fractured.